Table Talk with Brenda Perryman is brought to you by Livingston Family Dentistry.
Livingston Family Dentistry knows that good dental care ensures overall wellness, and healthy teeth and gums can perfect your smile. With over 30 years of experience, Dr. Ronald and Dr. Blake Livingston take the time to explain every treatment. Their modern office and friendly staff are committed to making you feel comfortable, informed, and satisfied. Located at 13724 Woodward in Highland Park, call now 313 883 3050. If your teeth are not becoming to you,
then you should be coming to us.
I am back. I am back. I am back with my co-host. Happy New Year, everybody. Happy New Year. Let them introduce themselves. I'm sitting on the other end. We'll start with Mr. Liddell.
Well, you know what, Mr. Perry, I was sitting here thinking something's different, and now I realize it's a new year. And you're sitting on the other end.
Yeah.
I'm Ellis Liddell. I help people retire happy, preferably. And I think the
I wish
greatest...
I would have known you how many years ago? Anyway.
That's all right. That's all right. And that's what people say all the time. However, too many people are retiring too early. They say I'm 62 years of age and I'm tired. That's never been a criteria to retire, and it still isn't. Make sure that you retire some bills before you retire.
Good advice. I'm AJ Williams, editor for the Michigan Chronicle City Lifestyle and blogger in chief at Single Black Chick.
Wow. And
I'm Daryl Buchanan, community activist, former director of My Brother's Keeper for the state of Michigan.
well, my brother's keeper, my sister's keeper, Tanisha Wyndham does that here locally in Highland Park. But a lot's been happening, and we're going to kind of go to the end of our agenda, towards the end, because everybody, some people don't think that the presidency has much impact on them, but it does. And we have a man who holds the office of the presidency, and a lot of things have been going on. So, it's a book that came out, Fire and Fury, I think it was called, and it comes out today, which talks about the Trump White House. Let's kind of talk about that. There's so much. Oh, so much, so much, so much, so much. First of all, did any of you vote for Donald Trump?
No.
Like
Proud
we're
to
gonna
say
answer
no.
that.
I know you're not supposed to answer it,
I don't
but
have a problem with admitting that. No.
no, I don't have one either. But listen, there are a lot of things that are happening, and let's talk about some of them. Steve Bannon, who we all know as it was his right hand man. He was, in fact, they said Steve Bannon was running the White House at one particular time. He said that the meeting that happened on June 9th, 2016 was treasonous. That was the meeting with Donald Trump Jr. and this lawyer from Russia and so forth. Any thoughts on that? And that was my birthday, too. I turned 23 on that.
Yeah.
No, I'm just
Look at you.
birthday. But any thoughts?
Well, my first thought is from the inception of this entire campaign, it was corrupt, and that's just proof of the level of corruption that they were going to. I mean, they keep going back and they want to say that, well, they were novices, they didn't know. Well, your lack of knowledge of the law doesn't mean that you don't break it. I mean,
That's a good point.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was from the beginning. They weren't even operating in terms of a political campaign. They were working more like some kind of criminal enterprise.
Right.
And so,
Good.
and that's just an indication of it. And for him to call it out, at least you can say he was truthful.
Any other thoughts on that?
Well, let me just say this here. When someone works very close to you, like Steve Bannon did, you figure out what bodies do you want to tell people where they're buried. You know stuff. Of course you know stuff. It's what stuff you're going to say. And when you consider a guy your friend, Trump considers Bannon his friend, and I guess Bannon considered Trump his friend. So he's mentioning things about a friend. And I think these guys are still friends when all this is over. It's not what's the saying? No permanent enemies, no permanent friends, just permanent interests.
Oh, okay. I'd never heard that one.
Yeah. So so in my opinion, when Bannon gives a little bit of the goods out, he's only giving out the stuff that he feels won't really kill him, but it doesn't mean it's not true.
I think what's so interesting about this book is it's not a new thing. I mean, there are several books that come out on presidencies, several. I think what makes this so sensationalized is the fact that it's validating what comes out in books are things that you don't expect, or maybe a little bit of corruption or things that are being said. All of this stuff is just validating things that we already think about Donald
That
Trump
many
in the very
of us
first place.
think about.
Right.
And as you know, Donald Trump has been saying fake news, fake news. In fact, that's come into the culture now.
Fake book now.
Fake book.
Yes, that'll be probably what he's
A
saying.
fake book now. And I was telling a friend of mine last night, I said, I don't think Donald Trump has really ever had any real friends.
No.
I was thinking that people have allowed him to just go through life and do exactly what he wanted. And then he'd run them into the ground because and I started studying Donald Trump back in the 70s when I heard of him. And I said, who is this rich guy? And he seemed pretty cool at first, but then I started noticing he was having bankruptcies. I said, he's not that. And then I started following him more, and I could not believe he ran for president.
Well, what I think is amazing about Donald Trump, as much as a president, he is not. It's amazing his ability to sway in his facade. Like you said, from a business perspective, from several bankruptcies, failed businesses, yet and still he's still this prominent person that people consider, this high-ranking business person. Not that several businesses don't go through bankruptcies, but even now in the presidency, he still puts on that same facade from a psychological perspective. I've had conversations where, he has this tumultuous relationship that he had with his father. He's never felt up to par. So it's kind of like you see a grown man play out childhood issues in the form of the Oval Office. It's very interesting.
Very good point. And the fact that he has changed the presidency right now currently, because that I don't care if you're going from Eisenhower to Bush to Obama, whatever, they never called people names.
And not just that. I mean, his assaults on institutions within our system of government. I mean, to assault the press the way that he does, that says a lot about who this man is. I mean, that's what dictators do.
And what kind of president is giving out awards to the press for being fake and stuff next week?
What
Who would
president?
ever take the time?
Yeah, I was going to say, who
He
has
would.
the time?
Right. Back to Ms. Perriman's point, has he ever had any real friends? Well, has he ever been a friend? When you make statements like, the game was to try and sleep with my friends' wives,
Right.
I mean, when you say that was the game, you're not committed to anyone. One of the truths that I have with some of my male friends from age 20 on up, because keep in mind, when you're out of college and a friend's mother comes to visit him at college, she's probably 38,
Could be, yeah.
right?
I didn't even think of it like that.
Yeah, so maybe 36. So
Depending.
you're talking about somebody who looks as pretty, who has the tight body, just like the young ladies walking around campus, actually tighter. So with that in mind, you have to have some truths. One of the truths was no friends. You can't be no mothers of your friends, no daughters of your friends, no girlfriends of your friends. And if you don't live by those three truths, you're going to mess up a friendship.
Yeah.
Well, if Donald Trump's around saying the goal is to get in bed with his friends' wives, he's never been a friend. He doesn't have truths. And when there's no filters, you have things like what she just said. When there's no filters, There's a moral filter. This is probably the first president who literally had not a single filter.
But it's interesting that I agree. It's interesting that you say that because one of the big things that I took from what was leaked in the book is the perspective that he never thought he would win. He didn't want to win.
He didn't want to win.
He didn't want, and I honestly,
branding.
it was a branding thing. It was more or less a mockery, a mockery of the whole
A
election,
joke.
a joke within itself. And I thought it was so interesting. And I've always stood by that point. Even before it came out, I was like, y'all, Donald Trump didn't think he was going to win.
That's funny.
I was like, because he never wanted to. When he met with Obama for the first time, in his face after he came out of that, like, no, he didn't want this.
Well, it's funny. During the election, prior to the election, my kid Ryan said, "Ma, he doesn't want to win, so don't even."
And I said it
he
several times.
doesn't want to win, and I said, "Well, why is he?"
You just look at the statements that he was making during the campaign that would just, knock a normal candidate out of a race. He would say the most outrageous things, and it would be picked up, and then people would just run with it. Well, he speaks his mind. He's a maverick. He's all these, things that, Americans, think that we are, but, really we aren't.
But that's a very interesting point because if that's the case, and once again, I'm always from a psychological perspective, if in fact he did not want to win, and it's just kind of like, you know what, take the biggest thing, I'm just going to get up here, I got the money to do it, I'm just going to do whatever crazy, say whatever I want, and I win, it says a lot about America's mindset.
America.
Well,
But not
let's
just
go back to
America.
let's paint this narrative properly though.
Okay.
Politics has been a joke in the country for a long time. Now, how many times do people run for an office just for branding purposes? I remember when I was recruited by this particular company to work in Dallas. And the guy who's over the Dallas territory, one of the top ones in the country, he says, you know what, Ellis? We've never had an African-American work on our staff. He said, we need to make sure that every African-American in Dallas knows that you exist. What's the best way to do that? We should run you for mayor.
Oh,
I mean, literally. He says you speak well, you have the look, you're polished.
yes.
We're going to run you for mayor. Now, I had never run for, anything, dog catcher. So, but that's how people do things. And it's happening in this town where there are people who aren't qualified for office, but they get put out there. And if some money comes behind them or a particular newspaper endorsed them, next thing you know, they're a legitimate candidate. That doesn't mean they really are.
And that's what happens when politics becomes a game of celebrity and marketing instead of being based on issues and who has, the interests of the people at heart. And so we've gotten away from that.
Right.
And we actually make jokes or make fun of people, we didn't, but we know that the majority of Americans made fun of Barack Obama because of his commitment to serving in the role of president. Oh, he's weak. He's weak because what? He didn't call other, world leaders names.
Right.
Because he didn't start wars. Because he didn't go and do what the extreme right wanted him to do, or whatever. Because going into, a country, Israel, and declaring what is going to be the capital of Israel.
Right.
Come on, that's a 1,000-year war that's been going on, and you just threw us right in the middle.
1948, June 6th.
Well,
That's
no.
when that war started.
No, but it started back in the Crusades.
Yeah,
this
but
goes way
but
back before that.
but as we know it, it started on June 6, 1948.
I get that.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I know what you're saying. It's just
It's
like
never gonna
it's
be resolved, is
It's
what I'm
tribal. It's really tribal. But
And so has our politics become. Very
yeah,
tribal.
it has. And one of the things which AJ talked about was the fact that he didn't want to win, or they think he didn't want to win. And then his daughter described his hair. That was can anyone re-explain it? Because I tried to explain it to someone last night.
It's the way I could sum it up is pretty much he gave his scalp like a facelift, like a tuck,
Right.
like a snatchback. And then they kind of infused around, and then like setting spray after you comb it. I I mean, it's a thing to behold.
Listen, I
It
get
doesn't
up-
move.
I
It
get up-
doesn't move.
I get up in the morning, I take a shower, I wash my hair, I put some gel in it, and I walk out. It doesn't take 2 hours to get my hair done in the morning. And when they describe the way they described it, I mean, it's a process. It's like
But it goes to once again, the psychological, the narcissism of this. I mean, it's simply like even the thing of him being, the whole thing with his inauguration, I mean, should have just proved the whole perspective of where we were going with him gloating and trying to inflate numbers. And the big thing that he felt snubbed by A-listers. Like, that has been Donald Trump thing. He wants to be accepted. Like, literally on a very deep perspective, but he, as you said, he's not a person of any type of integrity for anyone to accept him,
Or
except for
intellect.
people that
Or
probably
character.
or
lack
character.
Of, lack of
Yes.
character, and that's very important. You want your president to at least have some good character traits. This man doesn't have one.
Even diplomacy. I mean,
right.
I didn't care for Bush, but I mean, at least some level of diplomacy.
Yes.
I mean,
I remember-
seriously, we gonna pick with North Korea. That's what we gonna do right now.
I remember when Bush was running, when he had won, and I'm talking about Bush number 2, 40, it's 45? 43. And he gave that first speech, and everybody was kind of proud that he made it through it.
Right.
So, and this whole Donald Trump thing is a total different animal. There's no sympathy being felt for Donald Trump because he hadn't earned the right for people to be sympathetic for him. I mean, as soon as you think the guy has done something good, he comes back 10 seconds later and he takes it back. And then he piles on some stuff that makes you go, what? So that's the challenge that we're faced with this particular presidency, and the whole world is faced with. And that's why this book hit #1 before it could even get out the press. Amazon, I mean, everybody was ordering
Sold
this
out.
book.
Right. Pre-orders, and well, it's out today. And what is that telling you, though? What is that telling you that why people are clamoring? They said people lined up at bookstores last night
Well,
in the
key-
cold.
What it's telling us is this: if you have a fundamental belief in your gut that a person is corrupt, cruel, mean, nasty, and a book teases you and say, we write about this, we write about that, and it confirms everything you believe to be true, you can't wait to say, yes,
Yes,
I knew it.
yes.
And that's what that book captures.
And like I want him to be miserable. Okay, anyway, no, Schadenfreude, I talked about this on the show before. That's the German word for joy at the misery of others. And I can't, it's like I've been standing on the sidelines waiting because he has, okay, look at the environment. Look at the environment right now. Look at the weather. Look, I'm talking about the weather. Let's look at the weather. Climate change. I believe there is climate change.
Absolutely.
And he has tried to strike down all these regulations to help us ward it off a little bit.
Right. And that's the irony of that, is that nature said in your face, Trump. He said there's no climate change, we're not going to the summit. And what has happened in the United States? We've had the worst hurricanes. You name it, we've had it. And what's his justification? Today, 43 states have cold weather or snow.
Right. Golly.
Iguanas in Florida are like
Falling out
the trees.
That's all.
Really?
Yes.
They said leave them alone. They're just
They're
kinda
gonna
like,
defrost
yeah, they're
and
gonna be
they'll
all right,
come back to life.
But it's so cold, the iguanas are
They're falling out the trees in Florida.
But that tells you something, and you're still going to be a climate change denier because you have lobbyists, the pharmaceutical lobby, all these lobbies are paying these politicians to the detriment of the people. And I think that we, the people, especially we, the people who don't vote, need to start looking for people who are in our best interests, because people vote against their best interests constantly.
Yes.
Don't you believe that?
Yes. No, I do.
I remember so many teachers when I was teaching voting for John Engler, who was definitely against public education.
I think a big part of it is people aren't educated, and they're not taking the steps to educate themselves. That's why campaigns spend so much money on advertising or a television, because we as a nation, and Donald Trump is a reflection of it, we just take what we're given. we take what you say, we take and we just take, and we never really investigate or thoroughly look into a client, or have a very switched perspective. Middle class white America, or rural white America, really identify with Donald Trump from a perspective of, I can be him. And it's like, he's the person that, out of all people, you're going to be at the most disadvantage. But because in their mind, they feel like that they can identify with them or with him, that's why they do it, just off of that one factor. Not on his politics, not on his history. And we do that across the board in politics. I know people personally who go into the voting booths and literally, just because they name sound familiar. Oh, I seen that name on TV. I seen that name. I heard it enough on the radio. I'm going to pick this person. This is how we're picking our politicians.
That's the power of persuasion. And the power of persuasion has always worked. I was told right out of college, there's no such thing as bad publicity. It's just publicity. It's how you spin it, what you do with it. Because once they learn your name, they know your name. And you just said it. They go in the booth, they go, oh, yeah, I remember AJ. And they pull it.
Well, vote for me. No, I'm a good person. No.
AJ's cool. You know, it's like that. But it's happened here locally too.
All the time.
You know, it's happened locally. It's happened nationally. A lot of people like the fact that Donald Trump was a celebrity. Donald Trump has no affect, I say. He has no feeling for this. Well, he talks about the middle class. He doesn't have a feeling for
He
the
can't
middle.
relate. He's never been.
Exactly.
Their Secretary of the Treasury described middle class as people making $300,000 a year. I'm thinking, oh, you
Seriously?
really have no. Oh yeah.
And leastwise, the
needed to hear
poor.
that one.
At leastwise,
I
the
did not hear
poor.
that.
Think about the poor. They never mention the poor.
What he described is we're all poor.
I was about to say, if that's middle class, then I am in
Well,
poverty.
I don't know. I don't know. We got somebody else down there, down the
way.
down the way,
You
right?
notice he's a little quiet right now, right?
He's a bit quiet. He's a bit quiet. But Ellis, why don't you tell us a little bit, before we go on, about this new tax plan? How will it? Who will it help? Who will it hurt?
Let me just say this here. If we didn't learn anything else from Donald Trump, we learned that you got to put yourself at the table. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu, right?
That's right.
Right.
And you had a guest, I heard say that for the very first time, a young PhD gentleman that said that. And so I think that you have to look at this tax bill. You know, one of the things we're doing in our office is tax consulting. We're looking at your situation saying, okay, this will affect you, or this will help you. Have you considered starting an LLC just to start your own business, your blog? You know, she can buy a car under that LLC. She can do all these things that you would do anyway. Her cell phone, she can write off the cell phone expense. Well, that's a personal expense that people are just absorbing. So basically, if this new tax bill does nothing else, it should open people's eyes to say they want you to be in business for yourself, even if it's a part-time business that's losing money. Right off your car lease, right off your telephone. You know, take some write-offs and put it on the business side. That's the biggest challenge. But most people don't want to change anything. They want to leave everything just like it is. It won't work. You're gonna get poorer.
I'm going to be in your office
Right.
within the week. We're going to sit down and talk because, you know, we've watched how, you know, there's been this major push, you know, in this country to just corporatize everything. And
Right.
we've become a corporate, you know, country. You know, now corporations are people.
Right.
You know, and money is speech.
And the corporate tax bracket is way lower than yours.
There it is. Okay.
Okay, question. If somebody has a cake business, I bake the best cakes in the world, and I'm getting paid for it under the table, you know, I'm not claiming anything. Would it be to that person's benefit to do an LLC, or should they just keep on like it
No,
is?
they should. Okay, let me just say this here. The biggest challenge with small business in this country, and by the way, most of the business in this country is what?
Small.
Is small business. They hire more people than any of these large corporations do. Well, keep this in mind. If you're not paying into the Social Security system, that's the only pension that's left for the most part, then you're really hurting yourself 20 years from now, 30 years from now, when it's time to file for your Social Security and you never paid into the system. Well, you can get a $500 check if you just put $5,000 into the system. If you just say you earned $5,000, you're going to qualify for $500 the rest of your life when it's time to file. But if you took everything under the table 100% for 20 years, you got nothing to show for it.
Absolutely.
So now the system is set up, and he said it best. It's set up for corporate. It's set up corporate. You got to start thinking corporate. If you don't think corporate, then you're deciding I'm gonna be amongst those poor. I was talking to a friend. He said, I'm 62 years old. I'm gonna go draw my Social Security, and we can make it off of that. Now, anytime you got to start a sentence with "we can make it off of that," there's something
Not
wrong.
the goal.
You know, like I said earlier, when is being tired a criteria for retirement? Just take more vacation. Call in sick a few more days. I mean, you know, no one come to your
Good
house and say,
point, good
you really
point.
ain't sick.
That's a good
I'm
point.
curious, what is the criteria then?
For what?
Retirement.
You ought to have retired your mortgage.
Okay.
If you could, you
Okay.
should have retired your car payment. You should have retired all your bills.
Are you there?
Because if you're going to go into retirement and your bills are still working, no.
You ain't ready.
But that's
That's the checklist. Good to know.
That's called stress.
Got you. Got you.
Trying to live on.
too
live on
little,
less.
too late. Too little, too late. They said that Ivanka also in this book. They said that Ivanka Trump, the daughter, wanted to run for
President.
president.
Or Kushner.
Yeah, good luck.
Either her
or
her
Kushner, but they decided it would be her.
I think she better than Donald Trump.
Well,
Might be. I mean, but
I don't know.
until
just
we
saying.
see some type of record of service, you know,
No, I
at
agree.
some level. I mean, and they've demonstrated none of that. All they've demonstrated is their ability to enrich themselves, and somehow or another, you know, we glamorize, you know, wealth, and in such a way that to me is almost a sin. Okay, I mean, it's almost like idolatry. The way we, you know, just glamorize it and they say, well, he's rich. Well, he started off rich, you know, and if, you know, well, he took $1 million and he built this. If he took that $1 million and just put it in a 401k, he'd be more wealthy than he is right now.
His
His
fa-
dad gave him that.
Thank you. His father gave him an access that you just don't get.
Right.
So his father made his money through federal contracts, housing contracts in New York City, real estate, okay? So by the time Donald came along in his 20s, his father made him chairman of the company because his father saw something that most men, listen, look how many men won't give up their pulpit. They're 85 years old still
Right.
preaching on Sunday instead of bringing a young, dynamic person.
John Conyers.
So instead of bringing somebody young and dynamic in and mentoring that person so that their churches can keep going, now they're down to 40 members who come on a Sunday and they're 85.
Because the
talking to
older-
40.
the older generation is
but that's
dying
an
out,
example
yeah.
of the biggest institution we have in our communities, which is the black church.
Right.
But apply that to black business. Donald Trump's father was smart enough to say the future is going to be young people. Young Donald, we're going to put you over the company. You're going to go after these federal contracts like I've already done. So he basically stepped back, let his son go to work, and the rest is history in terms of what they built from a wealth perspective. Now, back to your point about we've almost over-glamorized wealth to the point where it's a sin. Let me just say this here. A rich man and a poor man was talking one day, and they agreed on one thing. It's a good thing to have some money.
I get that. I mean, but to the point that we look at, you know, the fact that he has money is something that qualifies him to be a leader.
No, I think that he did something that no one. Okay, first let's admit to the fact that a lot of people in this country voted against Hillary.
Oh, absolutely.
If we don't accept that as a real fact, then Donald Trump never gets in. They voted against everybody they had on, all 15 people or so they had on stage, because out of everybody on stage, if it was about celebrity, about standing out, he stood out. So he knocked off all the Republican candidates, and then they say, well, if you don't get the nomination, will you run as an independent? And he said, I'll consider that. Probably will. So basically, it was an anti-politics. We don't like what we see going on in the political arena is why he's there. So we call that a change agent. A change agent is a person who came in, he's going to turn everything upside down. We've lost the most congressmen. You mentioned John Conyers. We've lost the most Congress people ever during Trump's presidency. So as a change agent, he's been very effective in terms of what he came in there to do, which was to get rid of politicians.
Well, let me just interject with that. Not to completely disagree. I just don't think you can lump everything in. I don't think you can lump John Conyers into with being affected by Donald Trump. And just from a personal perspective of just conversations I've had, and it's just a personal opinion, Barack Obama being somewhat proof positive of it, I think United States being a very patriarchal society, I think that most people, a lot of America would rather see a male in office, a black male, Donald Trump, before they'll see a woman in office.
No, I'm not taking anything from that, and I agree. Now, in terms of Senior Leader Conyers, I'm not saying that he.
Oh, okay.
No. It just happened to happen while Donald Trump was the
Was in
president.
president. Oh, okay.
Along him and what is it up to now? Like 10 to 15 others who won't be returning.
Right.
Or they've already
More
resigned.
than that,
Right.
yeah.
So, and not to mention the Me Too movement and all the other corporate leaders that are. I'm just saying, a change agent. He came in as a change agent. Change is occurring now. Is he guilty of polysexual assaulting people? Absolutely. We heard his own words, and he's
Right.
saying that wasn't me.
Yeah, absolutely. But you think about the fact that people said, and they said they don't care, and the hypocrisy of the evangelical community who is all pious, and then they sit up and they don't care, and they're for Trump, so many of them.
Let me just say this here. Some of them are next, by the way, in terms of the sexual harassment. The Me Too movement is going to touch a few pulpits.
Oh, I think
No doubt.
no doubt. I think it will. Well, I think three words that are very important as we look at through these things is follow the money. That Mueller's investigation and all, and Trump he knows that they're right on his tail because you gotta that money. It's that money that's so important.
How do you gain that much wealth and no bank in America wants to do business with you? So he's doing business in Russia with Deutsche Bank, as his depository, and now they've gone and they subpoenaed the records of Deutsche Bank, and they have to respond.
Mm-hmm.
This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where all the information is going to come out. We haven't been, we've had somebody to speak on, tax policy, and we haven't seen his taxes. But, while all that is going on, Robert Mueller and his team, they have all the information.
But see, Donald Trump says, why couldn't the Attorney General be like a Roy Cohn? He was the guy who was McCarthy's during the McCarthy era. See,
and a friend of their family too. So,
Huh?
and he was a friend of.
He was a friend
Trump
of
family.
Trump's family. And the thing about it is, Donald Trump thought that, not president, he thought he was going to be king.
Oh,
Yes,
dictator.
Absolutely. And so, not understanding that the Attorney General, actually represents the Constitution of the United States. He does not represent him at all.
And remember, they said Trump did not want to read the Constitution. He did
Well, it's
not
obvious
want
he
to know
hasn't.
about the Constitution. Some of the things that he says shows I have more knowledge of government than he does, and probably most of us do. Don't you think?
But
Absolutely.
here's the thing. Listen, when you look at the agenda that Trump has, somebody's pulling those strings from back. There's no way this guy has all this stuff on his agenda. So my concern is, not that I'm a conspiracy theorist, but I have read a few books about it. My concern is, as long as he's carrying forward the agenda of those who have the tax bill, that was somebody else's agenda. That wasn't
right,
Trump's
that
agenda.
wasn't his.
So all these various agenda items that are being carried forward behind the scenes that no one's talking about, he may get a pass, because I feel like he's already gotten a pass. And the question is, are they going to keep giving him a pass every time something comes up? Will he get another pass?
And see, not just that. I look at, people that, even though, we're, on opposite sides of the political spectrum, I still have respect for them prior to now.
Right.
Prior to now. I mean, it's like, where is your character? Where is your patriotism? I mean, to allow this to take place, and now, just because now you can get an agenda pushed through behind this facade of a presidency, okay, they're all silent.
But
And they're
did
gonna
you
do this to their
did you
own
hear
detriment.
them saying you're the best president? I mean, how they stood around
I
in that
couldn't
rose
believe what I was
garden and
seeing.
they said that. Another interesting thing I found about Donald Trump, which is his paranoia about eating out. How he'd rather go to a McDonald's because they didn't know he was coming, so they couldn't poison the food.
I think it's a very valid point. It's a lot of people that don't like Donald Trump, and on a very different perspective. People have talked about Donald Trump's food, like eating ketchup on steak and a whole bunch of other. He's just an odd duck. I mean, just in a general perspective, he's just an odd person. And I think that plays into a lot of what's happening. I don't think, even from a Republican perspective, they ever really wanted it. But it's like, oh, okay, so House of Cards, let me work with what I have, and maybe we can use this to a benefit and use him as a guise, like you said, to get our agenda across without with kind of washing our hands and saying, oh, well, this is Donald Trump. He tweets. He's a little, it's not us as the Republican Party. We can't handle him. And it's not even, honestly, politics have been dirty like this for the longest. That's not really even, that's a secondary concern for me. A very big primary concern for me is the diplomacy perspective. Because, I mean, we're playing with big guns here. You're talking about one president that's mirroring the other president when you talk about North Korea. You can't have two fools can't argue. It's never going to be a good outcome to that. So that's my major concern. We can talk about the secondary issues, which have always played, but on you can't be out here trying to start a world war because you lack diplomacy.
Yeah, let me just say this here. This is typical commercial politics. You can't have a good guy unless there's a bad guy. You don't stand out. In other words, you talked about making cakes, right?
Okay.
Yeah, you talked about making cakes earlier.
Like bad or worse.
Well, you said you're one of the best cake makers in the world. Well, if I've never tasted a bad cake, I don't know how great your cakes are. So you got two people, as you said, two fools can't argue. So you got two people who are acting very foolish in their roles, who are dominating the media cycle. So Kim says, I'm going to shoot off another missile. Boom, it makes worldwide news.
Another one says, my button is bigger than your button. What are you talking about?
Going back to the
Is
whole
that a
hand
metaphor for something? Yeah, the hand thing,
thing.
the little hands.
Yeah, my hand, little Mario.
The little hands and stuff. And that was very important. But I say that I hope that this kind of brings things down a little bit. I don't want to. Hopefully, I don't spend this much time on Donald Trump again, except to say, yeah, he's gone out of office. We've gotten him
have
out.
Us all back for that show.
But yeah, we will. But here's why are the politicians so quiet on this?
And I think there's going to be a price to pay.
Well, you hope.
Yeah,
If we don't get people out to vote, it won't.
Who was
be.
the last guy that
That's
had
true.
something on everybody and he kept everybody quiet? Jay?
Edgar Hoover.
Yeah, you got some of that going on right now. Because those records about, like the settlements, all these records, we didn't even know there were.
We didn't know.
How many millions of dollars have been paid out? We didn't even know those records existed. Now those records have come out. What else we don't know could come out. And that's why politicians are so quiet. Everybody's afraid
That's
they're going to
very
lose their
true.
jobs.
Well, let's kind of go
For them to lose it.
let's kind of go to some local stories. One of them was the fact that Representative John Conyers, he stepped down after 53 years. Now, and he didn't step down because of Trump. He stepped down because I guess he said he wasn't well and stuff, but also what triggered it was the scandals. And it started with Harvey Weinstein, and then it permeated through politics, business, and so forth. What do you think's going to happen here? Okay, he stepped down. Do you see any candidates besides his nephew, Ian Conyers, who might be?
There are many.
Well, Bakari Sellers, are you familiar with Bakari Sellers? He was at one time the lieutenant governor. He's a young black guy who was for a short time the lieutenant governor of not lieutenant governor. He ran for lieutenant governor of South Carolina. A very smart young man. He continues to put this interview he did with Ian Conyers on the internet, talking about he's starting to push. So that's a national person starting to push Ian Conyers for office that's right here.
And all politics is local, so we need to pay attention to this upcoming race and campaign and make sure that we're not caught up in celebrity, we're not caught up in what somebody's saying on a national level. We need to make sure that we're picking somebody who has been there for us, throughout all of this, and not just now that this opportunity avails itself, well, I'm throwing my name in the hat.
Well,
I
that's
agree with that.
that's Trump. I mean, he just came. He didn't care anything about us. The reason why I put down the corruption probe is because of what's been happening with the towing. I had a friend of mine on the show, and he said he was telling me this was a few months ago. And Ralph Armstrong, his daughter's car was stuck on the freeway, and they towed it, and she had to end up paying almost $500.
Let me tell you, this is such a personal thing with me, and
Louder.
it's such a personal thing with me. I was at a lounge. I was at Floods and enjoying a very lovely evening. It was great. Parked outside, and I wasn't parked where it said no park, because on that street there's some no parking, no standing. I'm parked right at the corner. Several cars also parked. No one, no sign or anything. Come out, my car is gone. I immediately, because of where it was at, I thought that someone stole it. Talked to a friend of mine, called, reported it, made a police report, called a couple of tow yards. Now, the procedure is, once you report your car stolen, if it is at a tow shops are supposed to report to the police department that we have these cars by VIN numbers so that they can notify. 30 days later, my car is literally, they closed the claim out. The day when they were supposed to send me my check to pay out on my car, I had already went and picked out a new car. They called me, the police department called me and said, oh, they found your car. It's been at a tow yard for 30 days. No one notified me for 30 days. Now, because I am the person that I am, and I'm a little feisty like my mother, I didn't have to pay. I had to pay for the tow there. I didn't have to pay anything else because I proved that, they didn't report to me. But I honestly felt like if I didn't have insurance, if I didn't have all these things in place, if I didn't follow the proper procedures, I would have been out of $3,000 to get my car back because no one notified. It wasn't a slip through.
Let me just tell you this, and Ralph said this when he was on. He said, Brenda, I have the money, but what about the people who don't have the money and have to get to work, and they have to go through all these changes? The people were rude and so forth and so on because they got you by the the nuts. I mean, seriously. No, I mean, but we have a call. Let's take that call right quick and get right back. Good morning, Theo.
Well, good morning. Happy Friday and Happy New Year to you and your guests.
Happy New Year.
I wanted to weigh in on both of these issues, the towing and also John Conyers. I'm very appreciative that Gasper Fiore is being exposed, and that the connection between him and the police is being exposed as well. And also the fact that the community activists were involved in uncovering what was going on at DMC. So this is taking a little time, but it's for the benefit of the members in the community. Because it just seems to me that every little scheme and scam they can come up with to encourage and push people out of the city of Detroit is what they're doing. It's unfortunate that when there are conventions at Cobo Hall, if it happens to be an African-American group having a convention, the towing issues seem to rise out of a rat hole. But if it was others having a convention, it's like hands off. But as it relates to John Conyers, it's a shame that Jonathan Kinlock had a meeting last night, and he's acting as a dictator to tell those members in the 13th District that he's going to endorse Warren Evans to run for the office of United States House.
Well, just because they're endorsing him doesn't mean he will win.
Oh, absolutely not. But the thing is, they should not be endorsing him.
Anybody,
He's moving
yeah.
like a dictator, Brenda.
Yeah, that's why I've been hearing a lot about that 13th district. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. There's one gentleman who is a candidate who has gone to court But now it seems that the media is trying to make fun of him. Well, it's self-serving. That's why he's going to court. No, he's going to court because the members of the 13th district who are supposed to be represented by a member of Congress who would be in the seat of John Conyers need to be represented. And, you know, since he resigned, why is it that the staff is still holding the office open? When the office closed down, don't people go and apply for unemployment?
Right.
Isn't that how it's supposed to work, Brenda?
Well, good point. Well, this is a saga, and the saga has begun, and we'll see what happens because what year is this the year? Oh, there's supposed to be an election, what?
2018. This is
Right.
it.
There would be
In
two,
August about
because
it.
already we're out almost 12 months without representation, taxation.
And that's
without
so
representation.
unfair.
And the governor is supposed to call for an election, a special election. If it was a Senate vacancy, the governor would appoint someone to replace Conyers. He is not a senator, was not. He was in the House. And the rules for the House say an election is supposed to be called by the governor. Well, the governor, it's been reported, had a little secret meeting in the back in the corner in the dark with Warren Evans, Jonathan Kinloch, Mike Duggan, and they have decided among themselves that we don't need to have a special election. Just let it roll until the general election. People already get confused with the general election. Now they're going to be confused because there's a special election to replace John Conyers for, 30 days?
Well,
And then the regular election for the next member of Congress to take his or her seat in January?
well, all I know is what we have to do, those of us who know, to help stave off the confusion, we just have to talk. We have to tell people. We have to be, it has to be kind of a grassroots thing. Well,
Yes.
I appreciate your call and your information. We have another call right
Okay.
now. Thank you so
you.
much, Theo, and Happy New Year to
Happy New
you.
Year, Theo.
All right. Peace.
Thank you.
hmm
We have Rosa on the line. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you all doing today?
Doing great.
Fine.
Thank you for taking my call. I want you to know how the Congress works. Although John Conyers is not there, his staff is supposed to stay there. They are still on payroll. We can still call and get constituent service.
You can
The
still
only
call. Could you
thing
speak up
we
a little
can't
bit? You
do-
could still call and what?
I'm sorry?
What was the last thing you said? You could still what?
You can still call Congressman Conyers' office and get all the constituent services that you need.
Okay.
Free
So,
publications, expediting of passports, and anything else you might need.
okay, this is important. Let me repeat this for my audience, that you could still call Congressman Conyers' office. The office is still running to get constituency services.
That's the law. The head of the office is now his chief of staff.
Okay.
They still get their payroll check. Everything is still going.
Okay.
That's the way it's done.
But they can't vote. And
No,
don't
we
have a
do
vote.
need a congressman in there to go on the floor and vote and pass legislation. Those are the things that they can't do. And by law, we're entitled to have a representative.
Absolutely.
No matter what the governors say, we are supposed to have a representative, no
Okay.
matter how long or how short it is. But I do want you to know you can still have those services performed because the office staff and the district office staff must continue to be paid. That is a congressional law.
Rose, I really appreciate your information. That's very good information to have. But we still have to get someone in there for that
Yes.
vote.
I
Okay.
also understand that, I heard that Judge Mathis is going to run.
Yeah, I heard that this week too.
So no matter who they want in, we're going to vote for who we want. I'm in Conyers District. I'm going to vote for who I want in and the most qualified person.
Absolutely. Okay.
Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you for calling. Yes, we did hear that Mathis was going to run. Do you think that would be that same celebrity piece?
Definitely. Unfortunately, yes.
I mean, he hasn't. I mean, he's here. I mean, but he's based out of California. You know, the whole thing is.
I thought he was based out of Chicago.
Chicago.
No, show's out of Chicago. He has a house in California, but he also still considers this his home.
Right.
And he talks about Detroit, and he identifies himself with Detroit. And people in Detroit love
and
Judge Mathis.
he was at Beans and Cornbread getting a carry out one day when I was there. But anyway, what do you think, Alice?
What do I think?
No, but I know you have thoughts. But what I was thinking about was about Mathis.
You know what? I think a number of people are going to run for that office, and I think you said it best. And we just have to see. You know, Sherry Gay Daniego is also. A number of people are considering it. I just hope that people get out and vote. That's going to be the key. I just don't want it to be like when the mayor was elected. It was such a small turnout that, yes, he won, but it wasn't like he won because he got so many more votes than any other mayor in past history. So I just want people to come out and vote and realize how important their vote is.
Absolutely. Now, we got a new arena. We got LCA, Little Caesars Arena, and some people are boycotting the arena because they had Kid Rock first. He was the first act. I don't understand why they're boycotting, period. But it was an expensive arena, and a lot of people have gone. I know of people who've come from out of state to go to that arena. And the Palace and Joe Louis Arena is going to be torn down for apartments and stuff, and those are going to be some high rent things, don't you think?
On the waterfront, absolutely.
Right, on the waterfront.
Definitely.
And also, the Palace is up for sale. Who would buy that Palace? Oh, I don't know.
I mean, I don't know what you would be able to convert it over into because, you know, we've seen that the demise of malls. So, I mean, Northland is, you know, going through its changes. Eastland is in trouble. So, I mean, people aren't into big box retail. I don't really know what the use, you know, for that would be because it is basically an arena unless you were to go in and reconfigure the interior of it somehow and create something else.
Look at what happened with the Pontiac Silverdome.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And just based on that experience, you know, I don't think, you know, the people of Auburn Hills want to, you know, have that same kind of experience that Pontiac had when the Lions walked away from the Silverdome. So that's going to be an issue. And, you know, Joe Louis, you know, it sits on prime real estate, you know, right there. And, you know, I've actually had thoughts about, you know, what to put there. And it would be a perfect location for us to have a Motown Live. Has anybody been to LA Live? You know, it's where the Staples Center is and the Hanukkah Theater.
Right.
And if you go down there, I mean, there are restaurants and all kind of activities. I remember I was there a few years back, and I was walking, you know, through this mall. It was right after the owner of the Lakers died. So they had this large gathering of people there. But I saw people lined up, and it's like, wow, what is this over here? And I just walked over and I asked somebody, you know, what's going on? What do you want? And they were in line because Erykah Badu was performing at this small restaurant that's right there on, you know, LA Live.
Is it kind of like a House of Blues? Kind of setup?
Yeah.
Similar?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that's what I'm saying.
It's in that. I think that it's in that same area before they have the BET Awards and stuff. There's a whole bunch of stuff outside of everything because I have a former student who does participate in that. They even have some sports things going on outside of this area.
Yeah, because like I said, the Staples Center is right there, and both the Clippers and
Well,
the Lakers.
yeah, I know, but California has a different kind of
Vibe.
of even population. You know, think about it. They had just so many people. But I don't know, perhaps. But
They also get a lot of tourists.
they get a lot of tourists.
And then Detroit has to work on tourism for us. I mean, as I travel, people say, "Oh, I've never been to Detroit."
I agree with that.
Oh, I came through the airport changing planes. We've got to figure out how to get them to come. I think when they finish this Motown, back to your Motown experience, when
Right.
they enhance the enlargement of that, and you just got to let the world know that we're here and that people actually come here. I mean, if you go to Montreal, Canada, then you ought to come to Detroit. But we got to do a better job of messaging that.
Or Toronto.
Absolutely. Now,
I
real
agree with
quick, they got rid of Caldwell as, and I think they should have, as the coach of the Lions.
Yeah, so
I know he's your Kappa brother.
well, he's my Kappa brother and he's my friend. Okay, so I contacted
but
him. We
you
talked
know.
about that. I hear the most ridiculous claims made about him. It's like, well, he's emotionless. He doesn't change his. He's not fiery enough. And I've been a coach for 40 years.
That's
And
based
that
on
whole
a
thing-
stereotype.
Yeah, and that whole thing about being fiery as a coach. When I was a young coach, I was very fiery. Okay, and I made a lot of mistakes because I was so mad about what was going on. I stopped thinking about what I should have been doing, as opposed to being calm and being focused on what I needed to do. If you looked at Caldwell, he was focused on, listen, as a coach, you do your work before.
But you were not getting paid millions of dollars.
I should have been.
I know that's right. So
I
let me
should've
just
been.
chime in on that one. All right, it's a good Christian brother, first of all, and when he said basically the Lord will make a way, he basically was saying that I can't tell you what I'm going to do because God already knows what I'm going to do. I'm a believer. His head of security is one of my clients, and I can tell you that everything I've heard, he's a great guy. So here's a great guy that took a team, and he did just as well with the owner, Ms. Martha, say. He did just as well as anybody else who's led this team, but we got to let somebody go. They committed to Stafford, couldn't let him go.
Right.
So therefore, who gets to go? The head coach gets to go.
Right.
And so that's just the way it goes. But
That's
I
business.
applaud the Fords for hiring a black coach in Detroit.
Right.
Because there's a lot of cities that still have yet to hire their first black assistant.
Still haven't.
Let alone black coach.
Right.
So my hat's off to the Fords for giving the brother a chance. And you're right. I agree. I hope he ends up someplace else.
And I think he's got the team almost ready for playoff contention eventually. But
How many brothers do that, and then somebody else comes in after, and they build a whole reputation? I'm thinking about a guy that's getting ready, be hired at Oakland now. Okay, and they just talk about, the look and all this other kind of stuff that he does, and it's like it's a facade, it's a bunch of crap.
based
I
on
love
the
Lions.
stereotype.
I love the Lions, and I feel you on that. But I'm sorry.
Well,
I'm just
everybody,
disheartened it ain't gonna
time
happen.
is up. Time is up. We have to say goodbye. It's so nice we had this time together.
And before I go, I need to say, Happy Founders Day to all the brothers of Kappa Alpha Psi. Today is our Founders Day. No. Okay.
All right. Okay. I got my red on for Kappas.
Thank you.
Psych. Anyway, see you next week.